I'll just read this. This originally my wife read in Lansing. On February 25th of 2007, my son was caught drinking and driving with his two little girls. Well, the children were allowed to go home with some friends that were with him in the vehicle, and he told them to call myself and my wife. Well, they didn't. Instead, they called CPS and turned the girls over to them. My wife and I contacted Kent County CPS the next day and asked if we could take care of the girls because they had given us our little girl, our granddaughter, in the past when she was only 6 weeks old. They told me to show up for court the next day. We did, but we were denied placement because my wife was falsely accused of being on the abuse and neglect state registry. The girls were then placed in foster care. Now, let me stop there. They never picked on me. They always picked on my wife. It was always something, my wife. I was on the abuse and neglect registry at this time, although they never mentioned that. How I got on the abuse and neglect registry back in '97, I was a single father. I had a mentally impaired child that got into a lot of mischief at school, and CPS was called. CPS came out to our house 3 times. I had 3 boys and myself, and they would ask the same questions time after time after time, and the kids got sick of it, and I did too, having them come out to the house and bothering us. That 3rd time, I told the lady, I said, look, if you don't have a warrant, don't come back to the house. Well, she called me the next day, and she said, well, I won't be to your house anymore. Instead, I'm going to put you on the abuse and neglect registry. And that's what she did. 3 months later into this ordeal, after these granddaughters were taken, I did get expunged from that registry. We visited the girls as often as we were allowed during the 10 months of foster care. They were in 3 different homes, always being moved for behavioral problems. The 2-year-old would have behavioral problems, nightmares, and harming others. The girls were so wild and unmanageable that no one wanted or loved them, no one but us. My wife and I, we always went to the hearings. Each time we asked Bethany Christian if we could be allowed for the girls to come live with us, but was denied or got a we'll see from the caseworker. One day, the regular caseworker was not in court, but her supervisor was. We talked to him after court, and he told us to contact him, and he would submit our request because the worker did not put in her records that me and my wife ever wanted them. They had no record that we ever requested these girls.
Do you say that might happen because they kept changing caseworkers?
No, they only had one caseworker. They had no record, they never made a record that we asked for the girls from the first place. Finally, somebody listened, and he was the supervisor of the worker. So we wrote letters to the judge and the girls' attorney, and we were finally approved for our babies to come home. And 11 long months later, they did. They had been in 3 different foster homes. When we finally got them, when we picked them up from Bethany Christian Services, both of the girls were sick, vomiting, they were feverishly, and one of them had the worst diaper wet rash we ever seen. It was all down her legs and up to the middle of her stomach. We later learned through the WIC records that no immunization ever took place while they were under Bethany care, foster care. So they didn't have any immunizations then. Fantasia was having severe problems. We didn't get much help from Bethany. Finally, Fantasia's, the oldest one who was 2, acted out one day in the doctor's office, and it lasted for 20 minutes. My wife's doctor called Bethany, and we finally got some behavioral help for her. We were finally able to get her into therapy. Within 3 months of my my wife was working one-on-one with Fantasia. She had given up her job at the restaurant, and so she could take care of both of these girls. And we finally got them where they were, well, when they were taken 10 months later, they weren't normal kids, they were angels. They were setting dinner tables, and, you know, 3 and 2 setting the dinner table, and very good girls. We got a CASA worker that July, about 4 months into the ordeal, and a grandson was born, and taken. A grandson was born by this woman, my son's ex-wife, and she was immediately taken from the hospital and put into foster care in Kalkaska, Michigan. This will play in later on. So we noticed we wanted him, and we kind of wondering why we're not getting him, and we're supposed to be adopting these girls because the rights of the parents were terminated. Well, in September of 2008, a fight broke out in a separate apartment, which was upstairs from us. We were not involved with this, but woke up from the noise. At this time, we placed a 911 call, not knowing that this would result in us losing our granddaughters. We thought we were doing the right thing. We were cited by Bethany Christian and our CASA worker for the incident in our home because we knew the people involved. It was not our home, it was the upstairs apartment and completely different home. We have no idea how the agency even knew what had happened upstairs. The CASA worker called Kent County CPS, which turned that over to Ottawa County. We wondered why, because we didn't do anything wrong. Well, Ottawa County CPS came out and found nothing when he visited us. He said that we had done everything right and could not find any form of abuse or neglect on our part. In fact, this CASA worker even went as far as doing a sex registry search of the neighborhood, and she told us where all the sex registry people lived. In fact, one lived next door. So, we went to we thought, well, we had another chance because they sent a letter out telling us, we're going to take the girls, but you can go in front of a foster appeal board. Well, we got at the foster care appeal board, and that was held at Bethany Christian Services, and on the board was 5 foster mothers who get their children from Bethany Christian Services. And everything that went on, we thought we had won, but seeing the cards that were stacked against us, we lost.
Were these single mothers?
No, they were foster mothers.
I mean,
Well, I don't know if they were single or not, but they were foster mothers that got their children from Bethany Christian. They praised us at the review hearing for all we did for the girls and the great changes in them, but they took them out of gut feelings. The biggest gut feeling was what was going to happen when our son got out of prison in 2013, and the fact that we babysitted occasionally for our other grandchildren. One thing that was mentioned there, the CASA worker goes, yeah, we found a home for these girls up in Kalkaska, Michigan, and these people are licensed, and they want to adopt these girls. Yeah, and the expression on the foster care appeal board faces these women were going, oh, how wonderful. What a wonderful thing. Well, they lasted in Kalkaska, Michigan for 6 weeks. A year later, I got a phone call from an ex-worker that doesn't work for the agency anymore. The girls were removed from that home in 6 weeks due to sexual allegations. I know if they had stayed with me, there wouldn't have been any sexual allegations.